Okay, this is going to be a demo video for making a dry point etching on plexiglass. So you're going to start with your sheet of plexi. You'll see that it has a clear plastic coating on the back and the front. You definitely need, you can peel it off both sides if you want, but you definitely need to peel it off the one side that you're going to be etching onto, that you're going to be scratching into, because it won't print well. It will just end up with all these rough edges if you leave the coating on. You can leave it on the back in case you want to protect the back, in case you want to use the other side of the plexi at a later date. So what you're going to do is you're going to get, you can draw freehand onto the plexi if you desire, or you can get an image that you've drawn or something that is inspiring to you by another artist, and you're going to tape it onto the back. So after you've pulled off the plastic sheeting from here, you're going to tape your design onto the back, and you're going to get your etching needle that can look something like this. It has a sharp point on it, but you don't necessarily have to have an etching needle, just anything with a sharp point like a compass or a safety pin would work. And you're going to etch with your, just scratch with your etching needle the design into your plexiglass. This piece I have is a piece by Morandi, an Italian artist who does beautiful etchings. His would have been done on metal plates and etched with acid, but you can see his, I chose this piece because it's got beautiful cross-hatching lines in it that shows a lot of different tonality, and it also shows, gives a lot of form also. He cross-hatches and follows the form of the thing that he is trying to model. So you can see it follows the roundness of this can and this and the bottle, things like that. You can see it curving around to give it more shape and form. So that's an idea to think about when you are etching yours as well. And you can see the more you etch and scratch, the more ink it's going to hold, and the less you scratch, the less ink it will hold, so you'll have lighter areas. Okay, so after you have etched scratched your design into your plexi, you're going to end up with something like this. You probably won't be able to see it as well as this. This has just been inked and has a little bit of ink left in there, so you could actually see what it is. But you're going to have a piece ready to ink. So the next step for inking is you're going to use your aqua ink. You can use a piece of cardboard, like the back of your any drawing pad. You can cut a piece of cardboard, and you're just going to make sure that you are putting the ink on the side that you have etched and not the side that you haven't etched. It can be deceiving. And remember that, keeping in mind also that your finished design is going to be in reverse. Let me show you what I mean. This is a piece that I took from this one that I have etched, and you can see that it's mirrored. So keep that in mind. So if you want to end up with something looking exactly the same as this, you can go into Photoshop and mirror it, and then print it out in a mirror image, and that way when you print it, it'll end up looking like this. So when you have to think about that too, when you if you have text, otherwise the text will turn out reading it backwards. You'll be reading it backwards, so you want to think about that. Okay, so back to this. You are getting your ink, and smearing it around all of your plate. So the idea with this intaglio type of printing, as opposed to the relief printing, all those lines that you have scratched into your plate are what will pick up and retain the ink. So you really want to push the ink into all those lines so that that is what will appear black on your white paper, as opposed to relief ink where all the lines that you, as opposed to relief printing where all the lines that you carved out remain the color of the paper. And this here is all the lines that you've carved will be the color of the ink. So cover the whole thing in ink, and you want to really kind of push it into those lines. And then you can use the other side of your cardboard and then scratch off, or just kind of take off a little bit. You're not scratching it, you're just going to take off a little bit of the ink. Don't use anything hard. This cardboard is good because it's soft and it won't scratch the plexi. And then you can use tarlatan, which looks like this. It's kind of a stiffened cheesecloth type of fabric, Tarlatan. And you kind of roll it wad it into a ball and get a nice flat area like this. However, I find with this aqua ink, as opposed to with, if you were using oil-based ink, you might want to use the tarlatan, but with this aqua ink, I found that a paper towel is more than adequate, and you just kind of wad it into a ball, get a nice flat surface, and then you're going to, I like to put a little piece of paper in behind to catch any ink that goes off the edges, and then you're just going to gently take off the ink. You don't want to be pushing too hard or taking off so much ink that you take it all out of the etched lines. So when it gets filled up, just get a clean area. And you can see the design coming through. Yeah, you can see that. You can see the design appearing. Might get another one. And I have a border on mine, and I'm just going to clean off those borders. Like that. Might go over this a little more and just delicately. You don't want to wipe out too much of the ink. It kind of cleaned it up a little bit, and you can wipe off the edges of your plate if any of the ink went onto the edges. See, I got a lot of ink on those edges. Just go around and wipe those. And then I'm just going to give it a final wipe. Get off any finger marks that I may have put on there. You can also wear gloves if you don't want to get ink on your fingers, and then just take them off when you're handling your paper so you don't get ink on the paper. But this is a process, so don't just go haphazardly. So make sure you get get it as even as you want. And then you can, as you go along, after you've printed a few of them, you might decide, oh, I want to leave some a little more ink in some areas than others, or maybe I want some kind of hazy effect on this border area, so maybe I'll leave some more ink in there. So you can decide what you want to do with that, but I'm just showing you how to clean it up to get print with an even plate tone around the edges, and hopefully no fingerprints on it. Okay, I'm going to print the first piece on a piece of printmaking paper, which is thicker paper, and I'm going to then print one on Japanese paper, which is a lot thinner. So you can see over here I have, let me turn this a little bit, I have a tray here with my paper soaking in it, and I've had that soaking for about 13 minutes, so you can soak it up to like 15 minutes or so. And then I have a towel, and I'm going to blot the paper to get the excess water out, so it's not shiny at all. It's just matte. You don't see any of that shininess of the water on there. I'm going to lay my paper down. I'm going to line up. Oh, let me turn this back here a little bit. I'm going to line up my print on my paper. I'm going to center the design. I'll have a little bit of a long, wider border at the bottom, I think. And then I'm going to hold it down and flip it over, making sure that I'm going to put my hand right under here, making sure that the paper doesn't move. I'm going to flip it over. And then because my paper is wet, I'm going to get another piece, I'm going to get a piece of newsprint and put it over the top. If I was to burnish right on top of here, that because the paper's wet, it might rip up the paper. So by putting a piece of newsprint or a piece of wax paper on top, that will help to protect your printmaking paper. I'm using this wooden spoon with a nice flat edge. For me, I find this is the most successful way of transferring my design. So I'm just going to go around. This takes a while. And I'm just going to go around, keeping pressure down so the paper doesn't slip, your printmaking paper doesn't slip. And I'm just rubbing back and forth in little sections all over the design. So you want to be really methodical about this. So I've just done the top, and you can, keeping your hand on the paper at all times, you can lift this back and see what results you're getting. So I'm getting, it's pretty light there at the moment. I'm gonna, but the design is transferring. Just gonna go around. And you're using a fair amount of pressure because you want to get that, this thick paper, you want to get it pushed into those lines that you've etched so that it will pick up the ink. That's why we wet the paper, so it will be softer to go into those lines that you've scratched out. close we're getting the design. I'm going to keep going over it a little more. And just kind of go over methodically section by section so you get an even transfer of ink all over the print. And yes, this does take a while, and you do get an arm workout with it as well. So nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's have a little look and see what we have at the moment. Looking okay there. And it's looking pretty good there. Let's just give this section a little more of a going over. Sometimes you can find, because you can also use the flat edge, like if you have another kind of a wooden spoon or a metal spoon, you can go over it like this. Sometimes I find you get the circular motion is because it's not a, it's like a smaller surface area, and that kind of sometimes can transfer onto the paper, but and kind of pick up the ink in a circular motion. That's why I really like this flat edge of this wooden spoon. I find that's most successful for me, and it has a little bevel on it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a little bevel on it, so it's at an angle like that, sideways. So it's at a 45-degree angle there. So it it will yeah, it's not at a right angle, so it's not going to create any line. It's got a nice flat surface there, and you can see it's kind of shiny because I've rubbed it so much. All right. Let's see how we go now. Give it another little go all over. All right, now for the great reveal. We'll see what we have. So there is the transferred image, and if you look closely, you'll see I didn't wipe very well here. Oh, I didn't realize that was it's a piece of sticky tape on there, so it caught the ink on it, so that kind of turned out, and I didn't wipe that well enough up there. You can see it's got a little bit of the ink transferred up there, but that's pretty good image transfer. So now then you can just let that dry on a flat area. Now I'm going to do it with the rice paper, the Japanese rice paper, which is a lot thinner. Oh, this is actually mulberry paper, but these Japanese papers are a lot thinner. You don't want to put this in the water and soak it. We're going to dampen it a little bit with a spray bottle. But you're ready to ink up again, and you don't have to clean the plate off. You can ink up again straight away. So let's do that. I would suggest wearing gloves and then taking them off when you're ready to print. In fact, I think I have some gloves here. I'm going to put them on just so I don't get so much ink on my paper. You really want to keep your printmaking paper nice and clean, because it's yeah, after you've gone to all that effort of etching your design and then printing it, and then just to end up with finger marks all over it is not fun. So I'm going to take off that piece of sticky tape that made its way onto this side. This is just the plastic wrap on the back of it. That there. Okay, so put my glove on again, and then we'll ink it up and print it out on the rice paper or the mulberry paper. Okay, so once again we're just going to get the aqua ink, and this is great as opposed to for cleanup, non-toxic cleanup, as opposed to oil-based ink, because it's you can clean this up with water, which is great for non-toxic printmaking, especially when you're at home. So remember, you are pushing the ink in, go horizontally, vertically, push the ink into all those etched lines, and then scrape off the excess. And now I'm going to wipe off my gloves so I can use them again for when I print again. Yes, this ink does get everywhere. So, oh yes, the paper towel to wipe it off with. So just bunch it up and then get a nice flat surface, and then begin to wipe gently. This comes off, this aqua ink comes off a lot quicker than oil-based ink does. Oil-based ink is a little more difficult to wipe off. This comes off really easily. So you have to keep that in mind, that you don't wipe off too much of the ink. But just make your way around. When the tarlatan gets, when the paper towel gets clogged up with ink, just get a clean section. And begin wiping around. Remembering not to wipe too much off. And then I'll just clean up my edges. Wipe down all the edges here so that doesn't transfer to your paper as well. And then we'll give it a final wipe and clean down the border. take the gloves off, and then we'll print it on the Japanese paper. I'm going to clean up that ink on the back as well. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now with the Japanese paper, I'm going to dampen it. I'm not going to soak it in the water trough. I'm just going to dampen it. I have a spray bottle. I'm just going to mist it. You can, if you don't have a spray bottle, you could get a wet sponge that's not dripping wet, and run it over. But you can see that that's getting nice and wet, and you can blot it on, yep, I'll blot it on this. I'm going to get it so that it's, because I can see little areas that aren't quite wet, and I want it evenly wet all over, but I'm going to blot it a little bit so it's not, doesn't have any shiny parts of water, any glossy parts. There. So I have several sheets of newsprint on hand that you can do that with. Okay, once again I'm going to put my paper down on a clean surface, and I'm going to line up my print. And then I'm going to carefully, let me see if I can move this over here. I'm going to slip my hand under so I don't move and then sandwich it in between and flip it so the paper doesn't move. And then once again, because this paper is wet, you can get something else, a piece of newsprint or a piece of wax paper, and put it on top so as you don't rip up your printmaking paper. And then make your way around like we did on the other one. And pushing that ink or paper down into the ink of those lines that you've etched, and working your way methodically around so you get even coverage all the way. So let's just have a look, see what we have on this first go. See, it's looking pretty good already. So, as I said before, this takes a little bit of time because this Japanese paper is a lot thinner than the traditional printmaking paper. It's you don't need to use as much elbow grease to push the paper into the grooves with, but so it's a little less effort involved in this, but still the same methodical working your way around, so you get full coverage over the whole piece of paper. All right, let's have another look. lift it up carefully. Oh, it's looking pretty good. That looks nice. I'm going to check this side. So you can see that it's nice and even over here too. And if there are areas that are looking a little lighter, then you can just come back in and go over that area and get a little more ink onto it. And down here. Okay, that should be pretty good. Now let's see. Yeah, let's see what we have. Okay. And there, that's this design, this print on the Japanese paper. And that looks really nice as well. And so you can just lay that flat and let that dry. And you can see this one has nice clean borders around it, and as I said, as you keep making prints you can decide maybe you want areas with more ink or less ink, or maybe you want some kind of plate tone on the edges here where it's a little, you've left a little bit of the ink and you can see it's kind of a little grayer as opposed to the color of the paper. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to clean up your plate. I'm going to put these over here. So I'm going to show you cleaning up the plate so we can put the gloves on again. And this is, you can use water to clean this off with as opposed to any chemicals like Gamsol or anything like that. And then to save cleaning up the table, you can use, less of cleaning up the table, you can use one of those pieces of newsprint that you used before. And spray it down, get some paper towels or cloth of some sort and just go over it. And you can also get a toothbrush. Right here. You can get a toothbrush and gently go over the areas to help release a little more of that ink out. And you want to make sure you don't let the ink sit in there overnight or to a point where it dries, because it will fill up the lines that you've scratched in there. It'll fill it up with ink, with dry ink, and then you won't be able to print anymore, or you won't get as detailed a print. So that's pretty good, and that's ready to print. So if you wanted to change colors, you could then print that up in a different color. And so that's pretty good. You can see it's a little gray. Still got a little bit of ink in there, but that's fine. You don't want to have it clogged up with a lot of ink and letting it dry. So if I take this out of here and show you the end results. Wow, lovely designs.